Chancellor Bruning's new government is navigating its way through April while the National People's Party, DNVP, teeters on the brink of collapse. The dictatorial agenda of the Hindenburg administration is prompting the Social Democratic Party, SPD, to raise its voice in warning against such political positions. For now, it remains essential to give the Bruning government a chance to govern parliamentarily. The government needs a majority to begin implementing its promises. The SPD will support the National Socialists, and any action against it would hasten the collapse of this bourgeois policy. This is the rise of Hitler. Now, in April, the overall political landscape remains uncertain. The new governing coalition is not faring well under a government in which Hindenburg rejects alliances. He is described as anti-democratic by both the far left and the far right. The German People's Party, VVD, is a coalition partner and simultaneously an outcast. The rest of the government is also complicated, with expectations fluctuating between positive and negative. Many far-right supporters are jubilant, while democracy skeptics are optimistic, but ardent Democrats are furious. The Social Democratic Party, SPD, is recovering slightly from its sharp decline following the resignation of the Müller government, but it remains in decline, having been blamed for the government's collapse last month. Both the far right and the far left are gaining support from the political uncertainty and turmoil. Meanwhile, the Reich Protection Act is beginning to have a negative impact, and more moderate elements are growing disillusioned with extreme activism at both ends of the political spectrum. Here, too, the balance is extremely fragile. All of this highlights the increasing political polarization, so there is unlikely to be any clear direction at present. The Nazi Party is beginning to see one everywhere. The London Naval Conference ended in failure, but Germany and Austria signed a trade agreement. Some in Leipzig might call it a failure. The Communist Youth Day passed for most of the day without incident. While the police confiscated some banners and placards bearing incendiary slogans, they acknowledged that the demonstration was relatively well organized. However, around 6 p.m., when the march reached Augustplatz, things changed. As the communists commented, the true strength of this Reich Youth Day march wasn't realized until the afternoon, when countless processions poured into Augustplatz from all over the city. By the end, at least 100,000 demonstrating workers had gathered. However, while the communists saw 100,000 proletarian demonstrators, the police insisted there were many uninvolved bystanders in addition to the 15,000 young communist demonstrators. Ernst Thälmann and other party leaders gave a speech, and a traffic police car tried to stop him on a nearby street. The communists allegedly tried to overturn the car. In response, the police intervened quickly and managed to move the car. But violence soon erupted. 7 police officers were reportedly surrounded and severely beaten with flagpoles and other makeshift weapons. Some were even stabbed. The official police report stated that the captain was severely beaten and stabbed to death. The sergeant died from his serious injuries a few hours later. Another officer remains in critical condition. 3 other officers were seriously injured. The officers responded by drawing their weapons and firing into the crowd. 1 demonstrator was killed instantly, and 3 others were wounded. The communists claimed that no car was involved, stating that on a side street near Augustplatz, the police, through deliberate provocation, prevented the large demonstration from leaving in an orderly fashion, causing a massacre of unarmed workers. The conclusions drawn from all this vary considerably depending on whom you ask. One newspaper reported that the communist crowds refused to leave the square without leaving a trail of corpses. For their part, the Communists proudly declared that a reckless police captain and officer had paid with their lives for their provocations. More broadly, they concluded that this was the flourishing of the young German proletariat, which, under the banner of its party, had repeatedly sworn to fight for the overthrow of exploitative society and the liberation of the working class through the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat. A party that includes such young people fears nothing. These events led to a ban on communist marches and demonstrations, which could pose a problem for the long-planned May Day demonstrations next month. If so, it remains unclear how far this will go. This was not the only confrontation between communists and the authorities in April. Perhaps emboldened by the Reich Protection Act, the authorities launched a fierce crackdown on organizations deemed anti-republican, such as the Communist Party. The party's official newspaper faced trial for high treason over past publications that called for the violent overthrow of the regime. The following day, police raided the apartments of some Antifa members in Bielefeld. The newspaper reported the next day. After the criminal police searched the homes of Antifa members on Tuesday morning, the Antifa leader was later informed that the local Antifa group in Bielefeld had been dissolved, pursuant to the decree of May 8, 1929. No incriminating material was found. A drum and a flute were confiscated. The Communist Party of Germany, KPD, the Nazis, had experienced similar repercussions. One of their newspapers was banned for 3 months under the new law. The Nazis commented, "Perhaps the persecution is starting again." Indeed, some KPD members ended up in prison. On the 27th of the same month, several senior KPD members were arrested in Wiesbaden. The police did not issue an official statement regarding the reasons for the arrests, but it is likely that they were also related to the new law. The Nazis lamented, "This is clearly an entirely unjustified act." As the state repressed them, the Nazis' ability to uncover conspiracies increased. Then, on April 13th, Wilhelm Frick, the Nazi Party's Minister of Education and Interior in Thuringia, issued a decree entitled "Against Negro Culture for German Culture." The decree stated that foreign racial influences are becoming increasingly entrenched, threatening the moral values of the German race. A wide range of activities, such as jazz and percussion bands, black dances, songs, and wind instruments, glorify black culture and strike at the heart of German cultural sensibilities. Suppressing these subversive phenomena as much as possible is in the interest of preserving and promoting the German race. One newspaper objected to this anti-jazz trend, arguing that such decrees would harm the economic and cultural standing of Thuringia. Both at home and abroad, even members of the Nazi Party opposed this and its policies. Is jazz banned because of the swastika? But why? Jazz contributes greatly to creating a joyful atmosphere in society, and there are good bands that play modern dance music with sophisticated jazz touches. The woman who loves to dance to jazz with a swastika on her heart, chest, or even arm insists that she is not alone in this view within National Socialist circles. As one newspaper wrote, upon closer examination, jazz and Nazism have much in common. Vibrant colours, stark contrasts, an innovative approach to harmonic tones, and a rebellion against the status quo, whether in music with jazz or in government with the Nazis. One Nazi Party member commented sarcastically, "We are National Socialists, so to speak, but in jazz we are not allowed to be. We don't need to isolate ourselves from jazz elements. We can skillfully use other popular music while maintaining our distinctiveness, even by adapting it to foreign music." One of Thuringia's biggest problems, it is said, is not the economic crisis, mass unemployment, the instability of the federal government, or even the communists, but jazz? Yes, the Nazis claim. And according to the latest reports from Moscow, Stalin, to bolster his faltering position, seems determined to rely particularly on the Jews. It is worth noting that some members of the Soviet Central Committee, such as Philip Golochukin, Lazar Kaganovich, Osip Pyatnitsky and others, were of Jewish origin. But they were not Jews. They were communists, meaning they had abandoned any religion in terms of ideology. What about Trotsky? Are the Nazis claiming that Stalin is winning his battle against Trotsky because he is relying on Jews who want to kill Russians? That is the case. But Trotsky is in exile on a Turkish island, and Stalin has already won the battle. The Nazis see this as a Jewish conspiracy, this time a global one, and they claim that the German government is not taking any action. One newspaper commented on this. The Jewish newspaper commented, "The National Socialists realize they are not alone in the world, and that there is a global public opinion ready, under certain conditions, to embrace the cause of the Jews abroad." It is encouraging to see solidarity with this cause. Judaism is on the rise globally at a time when Jews are being persecuted everywhere. The Nazis took this as an insult and evidence of a global Jewish conspiracy and retorted, "No one is more barbaric." So, you are demanding that the Jews crush the German people if they are simply trying to establish their local presence in their own way on their own land. In light of the decision to impose a special tax on supermarkets, it was clear from the outset that the entire Jewish community would immediately form a united front, joining forces with the entire international Jewish supermarket chain. It is also not surprising that any supermarket owner would oppose the tax increase on supermarkets, and this includes many non-Jewish supermarket owners in Germany. In international news, the London Naval Conference concluded on the 22nd of the month. British Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald lamented, "The differences of opinion regarding the naval conference and regarding the maritime needs of France and Italy have proven to be complex and intractable." I said the conference would take place. The conference did conclude, but technically it was only postponed while Britain, Italy and France tried to find a compromise. Nevertheless, the announcement of the conference's conclusion was met with enthusiastic applause in the House of Commons. Another international event was the signing of a new trade treaty between Germany and Austria on the 12th of the month. One newspaper wrote, "Finally, German trade policy has achieved a real success. The years of stalling and stubbornness that plagued both sides in their conflict have finally come to an end." The beginning of Chancellor Heinrich Brüning's term in the spring of 1930 marked a pivotal moment in the decline of German democracy and the dawn of presidential rule by decree. After the signing of the Jung Plan, Foreign Minister Curtius confirmed that negotiations were not yet over, but attention quickly shifted to the new government. Brüning's government was a minority government, sustained only by President Hindenburg's threat to invoke Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution, which granted the President emergency powers to bypass Parliament and issue laws by decree. Brüning explicitly stated that his government was not bound by any coalition and that this was a final attempt at cooperation with the Parliament. His message was clear. Either the Reichstag approved his reforms, or Parliament would be dissolved and rule by decree would commence. However, Article 48 stipulated that Parliament must be notified immediately of every decree and had the power to overturn it by a majority vote. Therefore, Brüning planned to circumvent this by dissolving Parliament before it could reject his measures. But by early April 1930 it appeared that the government itself might fall. Nazis, communists and members of the Reichsbühne took to the streets, and violent clashes erupted in Berlin. Windows were smashed, shops vandalized, and bloody confrontations broke out between political militias. Police arrested more than 100 people. In Parliament, the Social Democratic Party, SPD, submitted a motion of no confidence against Brüning's government, demanding a new democratic solution. The Communists submitted a similar motion. They were then joined by the National People's Party, DNVP, the right-wing Conservative Party that had been the second largest force in Germany until 1928, before shifting to the extreme right under the leadership of media mogul Alfred Hogenberg. Thus, amidst deep divisions, street violence, and a collapse of parliamentary confidence, the Weimar Republic teetered on the brink of political collapse, and Germany began its slide toward an authoritarian regime that would forever alter its character. The party was divided into two factions: the conservative large landowners who supported the motions of no confidence against Brüning's government, the small landowners and farmers, led by Agriculture Minister Martin Schieler, who sought to protect their deteriorating agricultural interests due to years of poor harvests, rising debt and foreign competition. Brüning cleverly exploited this division, offering the party an agricultural bailout package in exchange for withdrawing the no-confidence motions. This deal was accepted. Hogenberg yielded to the pressure. The attempts to bring down the government failed, and Brüning's government was temporarily saved. But on April 12th, the crisis resurfaced. Old fiscal policies inherited from Müller's government, particularly tax increases, were put to a vote alongside the agricultural bailout plan. The result was very close, and the laws were passed by only 11 votes, thanks to the abstention of 25 Social Democratic Party (SPD) members. The party did so out of fear that the fall of the government would lead to the dissolution of the Reichstag and new elections, which it would likely lose decisively. In contrast, Hogenberg's actions triggered a crisis within his party. After mass threats of resignation, he allowed members a free vote, resulting in a majority of nationalists voting in favour of the government, while Hogenberg himself joined the opposition. This internal division further weakened the party and eroded its cohesion. Following the vote by some members in favour of the Brüning government's measures, these MPs were accused of betraying their leader Hogenberg's trust and damaging the party's reputation, a serious charge that, according to party norms, is grounds for expulsion. Hogenberg responded to this challenge by adopting an even more extreme stance, calling for the formation of a strong national opposition bloc to combat the economic chaos in the Reich. This statement was widely interpreted as a commitment to an alliance with the Nazis and continued cooperation within the Reich Committee, the alliance that had united Hogenberg's party and the Nazis against the Jung Plan in 1929. Although Brüning's government temporarily avoided collapse, the political landscape appeared fragile and fraught with questions. Would it withstand the May Day riots? Would it be able to curb the escalating Nazi and communist violence by using the Reich Protection Act? Would the Nazis transform into a legitimate mass party? Would Hogenberg's party continue to support the government or ultimately slide into an alliance with Hitler? Thus, the month ended with a volatile political scene. A government barely clinging to power, a nationalist right drifting toward Nazism, and an angry left in the streets. Clear signs of the decline of democracy in the Weimar Republic.